Hi Simply Church, coming to you with another video. Just want to mention a couple of bits coming up and then just share a little bit with you from the book of Esther as we're continuing our series in Esther, and we were on, well, basically chapter 7 and just the back end of chapter 6. But I just want to mention, first of all, that I've already said it, but I just want to remind us again that on the first Sunday of October, we're going to all come together from our home churches and have one big church family gathering. Be a great opportunity to share what God's doing, just to worship, to celebrate, and just have some words spoken into our lives. And then we'll be able to update you a bit more with how we're going to move forward after that, how often we're going to meet in home church, how often we're going to meet corporately. But it's still, all of that's still very open, very fluid. We just want to be led by God on that. Our big encouragement is that we just keep growing together, keep being intentional in our discipleship and in our outreach. The other thing I want to mention for you men is that the men's weekend is coming up soon. If you haven't spoken to your home church leader or to John Miller and given your name or confirmed that, please do that. We need confirmation of numbers now in the next week or so, well, preferably in the next week. So if you could please make sure those are passed over. And I believe the youth weekend's coming up soon as well. So hopefully everyone knows all the information with that. And I know the team's looking forward to getting the young people together and spending time with them and just seeing God move in their lives too. I want to thank everyone as well for coming along to the social we had last Sunday, which is great to bring quite a lot of the church family together after being in our home churches for a couple of weeks. Just thank you for everyone that was involved in that and took part in that. And I know Ken and Debbie are real grateful to the people that supported ATEM as well, and they were able to raise some good funds to help those feeding programs in Africa. So yeah, just look out for those things, and as I say, just keep communicating with any bits and pieces that come up in the way as well. So, Book of Esther. I want to get back into back end of 6, chapter 7. Last week we just saw how God was involved in just the smallest and tiniest of details, how God just began to turn things around. You know, Haman had this plot to wipe out Mordecai, and all of a sudden everything's turned around. God's made this amazing thing happen with the king, waking him up, reading in the book where Mordecai had saved him, and then wanting to honor him in that, and Haman having to then be the one that has to dish out the honor to Mordecai and parades him around in the king's robes and horse and all those kinds of stuff. And we pick up at the back end of chapter 6 and into 7, where the queen is inviting Haman and the king to a banquet again. You know, she's already done that. And when she did that, the king offered her up to half of his kingdom. She just asked if they would come again to another banquet. And the same thing happens again. The queen comes and asks the king and Haman to come. And when the king's there, he says again, Esther, look, up to half the kingdom, what do you want? And we know that in her heart and her plan is that she wants to save her people. But I do wonder sometimes, you know, in that moment when literally, what do you want? You can have literally anything. I wonder if there was just that little temptation. Do I carry through the plan? Do I keep going? Do I make the sacrifice over maybe saying, you know, I want this, or I want this kind of comfort, or I want this to happen, or I want this for my life? Would we find that difficult to make that kind of decision when, you know, anything is being offered, and yet she says, no, actually, I want to use this for the good of others. And I really feel that's the mark of being a Christian. The Bible talks a lot about serving one another, loving one another, preferring one another. And I know in my own life, you know, there's so many things going on, so many things I like to do, like to have, and those things can really cloud and get in the way. And it's not that it's wrong to not enjoy life and have things. I'm not saying any of that kind of thing. But when push comes to shove, there should be that thing at the corner, you know, my desire is to, in the corner of my own heart or at the core of my own heart, to actually, I just want to prefer others. You know, how can I love on, serve on others? And you see that with Queen Esther here, right away. She says, actually, I'm going to be determined to carry this thing through. So when the king offers her up to half the kingdom, it's now that she reveals the plot of Haman, because above all the riches and the comfort, what's more important to her is that her people are saved. And we pick this up in chapter 7, verse 6. Or verse 5, let's start. Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther, who is he? And who is he who has dared to do this? Because basically she said there's some people that are threatening to wipe out, this person threatening to wipe out her and the Jews. And the king said, no, well, who is this? In verse 6 it says, Esther said, a foe and enemy, this wicked Haman. Then Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. Once again, just like last week where Haman thought he was going to get all these riches, and suddenly it's on Mordecai and his face must have dropped. Once again, the same thing seems to happen. Oh man, I've gone in front of the queen, I'm in front of the king, I'm privileged in this banquet. I'm also going to get Mordecai hanged, and suddenly, no. His name is on the line. His neck is on the block. And once again, we see how God just turns things around, how God shifts things, because Mordecai and Esther remain faithful. They remain faithful over their own desires and preferring others above themselves. They remain faithful to the core, willing to sacrifice and surrender to God. And God comes through. And we see that the king is super angry. He gets up, he goes out. Haman then gets down. Queen, please forgive me. Stop this, please. He comes back in, thinks he's assaulting. The king thinks Haman's now assaulting the queen, his wife. And so in the very gallows in which Mordecai was going to be hung, they're now there for Haman. Look what it says, verse 9. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs in attendance on the king, said, moreover, the gallows that Haman has prepared for Mordecai, whose word saved the king, is standing at Haman's house, 50 cubits high. And the king said, hang him on that. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he'd prepared for Mordecai. Then the wrath of the king was abated. Just want to remind us and encourage us again that God turns evil to good, problems into the most amazing opportunities to see God's power at work. Never doubt, never stop, never trust in the faithfulness, the goodness of God. We were talking about this in our Connect group, in our home church small group, yesterday night. And, do we trust that God is who he says he is and will do what he says he will do? You've heard me say it so many times. And when we do, there's no anxiety, there's no fears, there's no concerns, there's freedom, there's joy. We just know that God's got this thing. We don't have to have it because God's got it. And we see that. And all the way through the Bible, we see that God is at work putting his enemy under his feet and under the feet of his people. And I was just reminded this week, and I just want to finish with this passage in the first book of Corinthians, chapter 15. And it's talking about the resurrection. It's talking about that Jesus died and rose again, that death came through the first Adam, life comes through the second Adam, who's Jesus. And that just as Jesus resurrected from the dead, so will we. But it makes this incredible statement around the middle, towards the end of chapter 15 of 1 Corinthians 15. 1 Corinthians 15. And let's pick it up in verse 24. Then comes the end, when he delivers the kingdom to God the Father, after destroying every rule and every authority and power. So this is Jesus rising again. He was the first fruits. He's going to come again. And at the end, when he does, he will deliver up to God the Father every ruling power and authority. Verse 25, for he must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. The last enemy to be destroyed is death, for God has put all things in subjection under his feet. And I just so encouraged as I was reading that God is reigning. Jesus is reigning. Through his death and resurrection, he has triumphed over Satan, sin, and death. He has won over that last death, and he will come again, and that we will be with him forever. And that every one of those enemies have already been disarmed through the cross. And then one day, when Jesus comes again, will be finally and permanently got rid of. What that means to us is there's nothing that we can face, there's nothing that we can go through that God isn't in control of, that God cannot and will not overcome, because he will. So take courage as you go into this week. Put not your trust in worldly things or in your good ideas or in your ability, but put your trust firmly in God, for he is able to do immeasurably more than we could ask, think, or imagine.